There is a calculation every Iranian naval commander made in the first 48 hours of Operation Epic Fury. The Persian Gulf was finished. The Arabian Gulf was finished. Every Iranian vessel operating in Hormuz or the Gulf of Oman was being systematically located, targeted, and sunk by U.S. air power that Iran had no credible answer for. CENTCOM had been explicit. The objective was not to degrade the Iranian Navy. It was to erase it. Admiral Brad Cooper said it out loud, on the record, shot to reporters, sinking the entire Iranian Navy. That is not a strategic objective with conditions, that is a destruction order with no ceiling. So the calculation was simple. You move your most valuable asset out of the kill zone. You sail it beyond the range of the aircraft hunting Gulf shipping. You put ocean between it and the war. 4,000 miles of open Indian Ocean, international waters, no declared exclusion zone, no legal basis for interdiction. A neutral sea. The laws of armed conflict, as written, do not permit attacking a warship in international waters beyond the declared theater of operations. You sail far enough, and you are safe. That was the calculation. It was wrong by exactly 40 nautical miles. The IRIS Dena, hull 75, is a Moj-class frigate commissioned in 2021. Length, 94 meters. Displacement, 1,500 tons. Classified by Iran as its most modern, domestically produced warship, the product of a domestic shipbuilding program, Tehran spent 15 years and approximately $300 million, developing specifically to demonstrate that Western sanctions could not prevent Iran from fielding capable surface combatants. Iran called it proof. The West called it a frigate. Both were partly right. The Dena carried 4 Quadr anti-ship missiles, subsonic sea skimmers with a 200-kilometer range, terminal guidance, and a 165-kilogram warhead sufficient to put a destroyer out of action with a single hit. It carried Sayyad surface-to-air missile systems for point defense, a 76mm main gun, lightweight anti-submarine torpedoes, a 3D phased array radar system, a helicopter pad, a crew of 180. By any honest assessment, the Dena was not a ship that could fight a Virginia-class carrier strike group and win. No surface ship can. But it was a ship that could kill a destroyer in the right engagement geometry, and in any scenario where Iran needed to threaten Gulf state shipping or project naval presence into the Indian Ocean, the Dena was the most capable asset in the Iranian order of battle. This is why Pete Hegseth called it Iran's prize ship at the Pentagon podium. Not because of what it could do to an American carrier, because of what it represented. 20 years of Iranian naval modernization. The argument that Iran had built something real. In late February 2026, the Dena was not in the Persian Gulf. It was in Visakhapatnam, India, participating in Milan 2026, a multinational naval exercise hosted by the Indian Navy, drawing ships from 50 countries. The Dena had spent 2 weeks in Indian waters, conducting formation exercises with navies that had nothing to do with the conflict brewing 2,000 miles to the west. When Operation Epic Fury launched on the last Saturday of February, when U.S. and Israeli strikes began dismantling Iran's air defenses, nuclear facilities, and command structure, the Dena was already on its return voyage home, pointing west. Heading directly back toward the theater it had just escaped. Someone in Tehran made a decision. Turn around, do not go home. Put distance between the ship and the war. The Dena reversed course. It pointed south and east into the open Indian Ocean. It's away from Iran, away from the Gulf, away from the aircraft that were by that point hunting anything that moved in Iranian home waters. 4,000 miles from the Strait of Hormuz. 40 nautical miles south of Gale, Sri Lanka. Safe. Here is what safe meant in practice. The Dena was operating in international waters outside any declared U.S. exclusion zone. Sri Lanka is a non-aligned nation with no treaty obligations to either side. The ship was beyond the operational range of land-based strike aircraft operating from Gulf bases without refueling. It had cleared the Indian Ocean shipping lanes where U.S. naval attention was concentrated. Its crew of 180 had been at sea for weeks, had participated in a multinational exercise watched by 50 nations, and was carrying sailors who had done nothing in this war except sail away from it. The commanding officer of the Dena had reason to believe the math worked in his favor. The math he didn't account for had nothing to do with aircraft range or exclusion zones or international law. A Los Angeles-class attack submarine operating at patrol speed, 6 knots on the electric drive, generates an acoustic signature that passive sonar operators in training exercises routinely lose against ambient ocean noise beyond 1,500 yards. It produces no radar return, no infrared signature above background, no radio emissions when it chooses silence, or water as an absence of information, a gap water as an absence of information, a gap in the picture where something that cannot be seen is doing something that cannot be heard. The Mark 48 AD cap heavyweight torpedo it carries has a range of 50 kilometers at 55 knots. It is wire-guided to the target datum, then autonomous in the terminal phase. Its active sonar pinging a firing solution that the target surface ship has approximately 126 seconds to respond to after first acoustic detection. Do the math. The IRIS Dena at 15 knots, running southwest through 1,000-meter deep Indian Ocean water, has a turning radius under emergency rudder of approximately 450 meters. Maximum speed surge from cruise to flank takes 90 seconds for a 1,500-ton frigate. In 126 seconds from torpedo detection to impact, the Dena can displace its center of mass approximately 520 meters from its initial track. Assuming the crew responds to the alert instantly, with no hesitation, no confusion, no seconds lost to disbelief. The Mark 48's terminal seeker cone covers 800 meters. The geometry does not change. The Dena's commanding officer was not operating 4,000 miles from the war. He was operating 50 kilometers from the solution to his ship. These carrier strike group operations in the Indian Ocean had expanded on February 26th, 2 days before the Tehran strikes. U.S. 7th Fleet assets repositioning through the Indo-Pacific theater had established surface and subsurface coverage across the Bay of Bengal and northern Indian Ocean as a precautionary measure against exactly the scenario that materialized. Iranian naval assets outside the primary theater that could threaten U.S. interests or Allied shipping in the broader region. In the P-8A Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft operates 129 sonobuoy dispensers per aircraft. Each sonobuoy dropped into the water transmits acoustic data back to the aircraft in real time, establishing passive coverage across 8,000 square nautical miles per sortie. 2 aircraft flying overlapping patterns with no coverage gap between rotations have the theoretical capacity to maintain continuous acoustic coverage across 16,000 square nautical miles. The Indian Ocean covers 70 million. But the Dena was not hiding across the full Indian Ocean. It was on a predictable track, southbound, then east, then curving back toward the Strait of Hormuz when the crew believed conditions permitted. A ship fleeing a war does not make unpredictable course changes. It runs. Running ships have track lines. Track lines have geometries. Geometries have intercepts. The Dena's position had been continuously monitored from the moment it reversed course at Visakhapatnam. Not because it was doing anything illegal, because a warship belonging to a nation at war with the United States had changed course to avoid the theater of conflict. And that is precisely the kind of asset movement that generates intelligence tasking at CENTCOM. The attack submarine had been vectored to the intercept track on March 3rd. It had been in trail contact, passively following without closing, for approximately 11 hours when the execute order arrived in the pre-dawn hours of March 4th. The commanding officer had been at periscope depth since 0300. The contact was 12,000 yards to the northwest, steady course 245, speed 15 knots. The solution was updated every 90 seconds by the fire control coordinator. It had not materially changed in 4 hours. The execute order arrived at 0421. Encrypted. The commanding officer read it, confirmed weapons release authority with his executive officer, and turned to the fire control team. 1 shot. 1 target. Bearing northwest. March 4th. 0426 hours. The Mark 48 left the tube at 0426 hours local, 40 nautical miles south of Galil. Aboard the Dena, 0426 was indistinguishable from 0300 or 0400 or any other hour of the pre-dawn watch. The sea was calm. Force 2 conditions. The ship was running without tactical alert. No active sonar transmitting, because there was nothing to search for in international waters 4,000 miles from a war. The watch officer on the bridge was logging a routine position report. 2 sailors from the engineering section had come topside for 20 minutes of air in the relative cool before dawn. The sonar operator on the Dena, if one was actively monitoring passive receivers at that hour, would have had approximately 8 seconds of warning. A faint bearing drift. A tonal. Something that didn't belong to ambient ocean noise. 8 seconds is not enough time to sound general quarters. It is enough time to understand what is about to happen. The Mark 48 struck the Dena at the stern, below the waterline, detonating its 295-kilogram warhead against the propulsion section. The weapon is designed not simply to hold the hull, but to lift it. The pressure wave propagating upward through the water column beneath the keel, flexing the ship's structure beyond its design limits, or breaking the keel at the point of maximum stress. The Dena's stern section rose several meters out of the Indian Ocean in the initial pressure pulse before dropping back. The propulsion shaft, both diesel generators, the rudder assembly, and the stern diving control system ceased to function as a structural unit in the same moment. Even the flooding that followed came not through a single breach, but through every point where the keel's integrity had been compromised. A distributed failure that no damage control team at 4:26 hours, with no warning, pulling a crew from sleep could have addressed in the time available. The Dena issued a distress call at 4:31, 5 minutes after impact. The Sri Lankan Navy received the call and launched 2 vessels and an aircraft from the Southern Naval Headquarters at Gale. They searched for the IRIS Dena at the coordinates given in the distress call. They did not find the ship at those coordinates. They found oil on the water. They found bodies. They found 32 survivors, many wounded, some critically, floating in the calm pre-dawn sea or clinging to debris from a warship that had gone to the harbor bottom before the sun came up. 87 bodies were recovered from the water, 61 remain missing. Total time from torpedo impact to the Dena's loss of surface communications. Less than 5 minutes. Pete Hegseth stood at the Pentagon podium and called it quiet death. The first sinking of an enemy warship by an American torpedo since World War II. The Dena is gone. The tactical outcome is recorded. But 3 questions came out of Gale that CENTCOM has not publicly answered. First, the precedent problem. The Dena was sunk in international waters, 40 nautical miles from a neutral nation. It's outside any declared exclusion zone. The legal and strategic precedent that establishes is without a modern parallel. If a U.S. submarine will hunt and kill an Iranian warship in Sri Lankan waters, the implicit message to every Iranian naval asset currently in transit, in the Red Sea, the Arabian Sea, the Gulf of Aden, is that there is no safe ocean. There is no distance that constitutes sanctuary. That message may deter, or it may force Iran to make a decision about escalation that it has so far avoided making. Second, the Strait of Hormuz. CENTCOM confirmed that as of March 4th, not a single Iranian vessel was underway in the Arabian Gulf, Strait of Hormuz, or Gulf of Oman. 1/5 of the world's daily oil supply transits that strait. It is effectively closed. The global economic consequence of a closed Hormuz compounds by the day. The U.S. has the tactical capacity to sink Iran's navy. Yet the question no one at the Pentagon has publicly answered is, what is the plan for reopening a strait that Iran can threaten with mines and coastal missile batteries, even without surface ships? Third, the 180-man problem. The Dena left Visakhapatnam with 180 crew. 32 were rescued, 87 bodies recovered. That leaves 61 sailors unaccounted for in international waters, in a search and rescue operation conducted by a nation that had nothing to do with this war. 61 Iranian sailors whose families in Tehran and Bandar Abbas and Isfahan do not yet know whether their son or husband or father is among the 87 confirmed dead or among the 61 the ocean has not yet given back. The Dena was Iran's prize ship. Its hardware is replaceable. The 1,500-ton hull, the Qatar missiles, the phased array radar, all of it can be rebuilt. Iran has a defense industrial base and the institutional knowledge to produce another Mauj-class frigate. What cannot be rebuilt in a shipyard is what the Dena's sinking demonstrated about the reach of American power. Iran moved its most modern warship 4,000 miles from the theater of conflict and into international waters specifically to escape a war. The United States Navy followed it there with a submarine it never detected, and sank it before dawn while its crew was sleeping. No ocean is far enough. No distance is sanctuary. No calculation about international waters changes the geometry of a Mach 48 at 50 kilometers. The Dena's commanding officer believed he was safe. He was 40 nautical miles from Sri Lanka and 50 kilometers from the solution to his ship. Quiet death. The first since World War II. If you want to understand what comes next, what Iran does when its navy no longer exists and the Strait of Hormuz is closed and 61 sailors haven't come home, subscribe. Because the next 72 hours will not be quiet. Stay vigilant, stay informed.